You're watching Twin Tier Sunday with Jennifer Sheahen.
A BBC television producer, editor of top-rating BBC One program, That's Life. A show with more than 20 million viewers a week.
Thank you and welcome to That's Life.
Bryher Scudamore is a journalist at heart, and with a fast-track life, you naturally lose time to remember and learn your family's history.
Right, so I'm here on two missions. One is to appeal for your help to find out more about my great-grandfather.
Now retired and launching her own business to make sure others can tell their life story, she begins an expedition of her own, after a group of handwritten letters and a picture were given to her.
The reason I know that is Walter is because it was taken in Worcester, Massachusetts.
She now is following her great-grandfather's footsteps through America, one letter at a time.
A chap called Walter Mitchell, and at 23 years old, he came over in 1867 to seek his fortune.
And today she shares her journey right here in the Southern Tier.
Welcome to Twin Tier Sunday. This week we're exploring history. We're talking about one person's history, actually to be exact. This is Bryher Scudamore. She is from the UK and she has traveled all the way here to Montour Falls and has a special story about her family, where she came from, and exploring all of that deep roots that are here in the United States. How did you get here? You came by boat. Tell me about that experience and why you decided to take up this adventure.
Okay, we came on the Queen Mary 2, which is a beautiful Atlantic liner, and we did that because my great-grandfather sailed across the Atlantic to make his fortune in America. He was on a ship called the Hudson, which I've got a picture of. Now, the Hudson was small and would have rocked around an awful lot, and there would have been a lot of seasickness, but the Queen Mary 2 did not rock at all and was very nice and very comfortable. So it was not the same experience, but we came across the Atlantic just like he did. And the reason we did is because we're following in his footsteps. The letters I have that he wrote back about his experiences as a pioneer over here, with his hopes and dreams of what he was going to build and how he was going to bring over his girlfriend and things like that, have inspired me. And they've inspired me not only to follow in his footsteps, but also to create a business around making sure that people tell their families their stories.
So, you got on the boat. You're here. Tell me, what have you experienced so far, and what in the letters made you get on that boat and say, you know, you said 60, you're putting all your life savings to put everything that you've got into this project?
I think it was the humanity of this young man who I know nothing about really, apart from his letters. So he searched his wants. He was trying to find his fortune. He obviously didn't have any money in the UK. He was a carpenter. And so I think that the letters are fantastic. I wanted to find out more about the places he'd been, what made him who he was. And this adventure was part of what made him who he was. So I thought, right, the best thing we can do is hop on the boat and come over and follow in his footsteps, using his letters and seeing where he went, who he met, and try and trace a bit more about it to get even more of a sense of that individual.
Okay, and how has the journey gone so far?
Well, we've only really just arrived. I mean, we had a few days in New York, which were amazing. We stayed at an hotel which is about 2 blocks away from where my great-grandfather stayed. He stayed in a place on 989 on 2nd Avenue. And we went down there, and as we arrived, there was a lot of hoo-ha outside the place, and it was a new pet store opening. So how his landlady, Mrs. Trundy, would have felt about this being a pet store now, who knows? But looking at the street, and we'd stopped beforehand and had a coffee in a place called the Press Box, being journalists, and had a drink there, then looked at the house. As we passed back on the other side of the street, we looked up on the Press Box, and there it said 1867, and that's the year he came over. That was really weird.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing. And now you've traveled here to Montour Falls. What in the letters led you here?
Well, he talks, first of all, about actually Havana, which was very confusing because hunt though I did for Havana, there was no Havana. I looked in Chemung County, all these things, and then I discovered that Havana has changed its name to Montour Falls. So this is one of the first places he came to after he left New York. He was in New York for a few weeks, and this is where he spent quite a lot of time working on a grist mill in this area, building barns, and doing various things. So that's what brought us here, is to try and find some of the places that he talks and or he writes about. Yeah.
So what are you doing now for the next few days or even tomorrow? You're going to be meeting with some historians, and they're going to hopefully dissect this for you and give you more information. How did you find them, and what is your plan for the next day or so?
So there's a fantastic museum here, the Sheahen County Museum in Montour Falls, and then there's a lady who does historian for the Chemung area. So I'm meeting both of them tomorrow, and what I hope they'll be able to do is help me find if there's any families that he worked like this. A chap called Roswell Goff that he mentions by name. Often he doesn't mention people by name, but Roswell Goff he does. And if we could find any of their family, it would be fantastic to meet somebody who my great-grandfather worked for. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah. So they're going to help me understand more about this area, what it was like at the time, what his working conditions would have been like. And we might, you never know, he might have appeared in a local newspaper or something.
So true. In the Star Gazette, so maybe he was in the Star Gazette here, which is our local newspaper. So next step then, after you leave our area here in the Twin Tiers, where are you going to be going next, and how are you following that journey through the letters?
Yes, well, he mentions all the places that he goes to. So basically he travels from here up to Buffalo and he goes to see Niagara Falls, so that has to be done. And then he travels across to Chicago via Cleveland and Fort Wayne, and then down to a place called Quincy, and then across to St. Joseph, Missouri, which is where he then based himself, because that was, as he says in the letters, that's as far as the trains went in those days. Once you got to St. Joseph, you then had to get onto a mule or a horse, and that was as far as you'd go. So there he makes a base for a couple of years, working as a carpenter on rail cars and houses. And in fact, I've just this morning read one of the letters that says that he set up his own shop. So I might try and find that in St. Joseph. But all the time, he's writing some lovely love letters back to his sweetheart, who's Emily. And he's asked his brother to give her a ring. So, he's all very serious. And in the end, he doesn't marry Emily. But he has a dream of setting up a homestead. And the Homestead Act meant he could get a grant. And then later in the letters, he reveals actually he can't get the grant. He's going to have to work for the money because he would have to naturalise as an American. And he's already sworn allegiance to Queen Victoria, and he can't break his promise to the Queen. So he's going to have to work. And then, but he really can't persuade Emily. Reading between the lines, she doesn't really want to come over to America. So eventually, he gives up his dreams of creating his own home here and goes back to the UK.
So how do you feel about now, this is the first few days of your journey, how do you feel about getting all of this that you finally have dreamed, all of these things that you're going to be finding? What does that feel like? Are you excited for the coming days, or are you nervous, or what is going through your mind right now?
It's extraordinarily emotional. I mean, it's really weird. I did not expect to feel such powerful emotions it does feel, it's weird. It's like getting very close to somebody. But actually the only thing I've got is a photograph and the letters. But I feel like I'm getting really close to this person. And it's very, very exciting. And meeting lots of new people, and more an adventure. I mean, following his footsteps and launching a business at the same time, and I'm now 64, this is a dream come true. So it's really exciting.
Coming up after the break, Bryher heads to the Chemung County Historical Museum to get more information on her great-grandfather.
So I'm here on two missions. One is to appeal for your help to find out more about my great-grandfather, who was at 23 years old. This is a chap called Walter Mitchell. And at 23 years old, he came over in 1867 to seek his fortune.
Very handsome.
He is, isn't he? I
Yeah.
know. And he's also got a great character. And he sailed on a ship called the Hudson, and I was able to, thanks to the internet, fantastic thing, to find out that he travelled second class, not steerage. That's impressive, isn't it?
That is nice.
And he is, Walter Mitchell, 23 years old, a carpenter, coming from England and coming to make the United States his home.
Okay.
And he travelled with his two friends, Tom Fife and John MacDonald. One was a plasterer and one was a miner.
Right.
And so they were coming over to earn money and to live over here. And it didn't quite work out as he expected for various reasons. And so what happened was he came over to New York. And then for some reason, he decided to come up to this region to do some work. And he writes about it in the various letters I have here. Now, these are the original letters, which were written in 1867. This actually, first one is a kind of a CV of his life, which talks about where he went to and what he did, which is it's very, very delicate. He talks about obviously where he was born, but then coming over to America and being in New York and then working on the railway lines and
You're
working
so
at
lucky to
Broomtown.
have these.
I am so lucky because I said 2 missions. My first mission is to find out more about him and what it was like here when he was here. And my second mission is to encourage people to tell their life story for their family, because of these letters, I know about this young man. I know he was brave because he went and smoked a peace pipe with the Indians. I know that he was a very loyal friend, that he used up the money he was saving to buy some land to pay for the typhoid treatment for his friend who got very ill, was ill for 3 months, so couldn't work, needed lodging, needed food, needed treatment, and he used his money up to help his friend. So I really admire this young man. I know more about him than I know about his son, who's my grandfather, who wrote nothing down. So he's a complete vacuum as far as I'm concerned. So I am passionate about helping people tell a life story, which is what happens is with my system, autobiography, you can write a book. But first of all, my mission with you two is to try and understand more about what it was like in 1867 in this area. So he worked for a guy called Roswell Goff, and he built a grist mill, and he built some buildings, and he worked on rail cars. Now sometimes I think they were for the railway, but also when he moves around, he goes up to Worcester in Massachusetts, he talks about horse carriages that were pulled by horses with not the train. So earlier today I went to the Schuyler Museum, and a fabulous bloke there called Andrew has given me bits and pieces. So he's given me a map that shows Havana, and he told us a story about Havana. Very funny story about it. Do you know why it was called Havana? Because they were doing some mapping and the surveying of the area, and one of the guys said to the other one, "Gosh, this is so hot, and there's mosquitoes, and it's really hot. This is just like Havana." And he made a note of it, and then that's how it got its original name, and now it's named after Catherine. So, and some photographs taken of at the time that my great grandfather would have been there, and the sorts of things. This is looking down from the hill, which is where the falls are. And this building, which is the museum building, was built, I think it was 1823, I think he said. So that was definitely there when my great-grandfather was there. And it was a boarding house.
It's a great building.
And it was a boarding house. So it might have been that either you went and had a drink in there, or that upstairs, apparently, was one big open area where you would just find a space and lie down to go to sleep. So that I discovered. So this is another general view of the area. Oh, and love this. This is a Bank of Havana dollar.
Oh, no.
How about that? And in the images, in the corner, there's a carpenter.
Yeah.
So, unlikely to be my great-grandfather, but you never know. And then he talked about the canal and how that brought business to that area and how important it was.
Oh, absolutely.
And just as you're talking about the maps of the area, so this shows the housing, so you can see how many people lived there and what sort of density the population was. So,
Well, the canals and the railroads, they brought in, a lot of industry and just opened up the area for settlement. So.
yeah. And so that's a picture taken, I think it was
That's
in
beautiful.
1868, I think it was. So it's 1 year after my great-grandfather was there, of the Montour main building and the town, town hall, because apparently when it was Havana, it was the county capital And there was
County
some,
seat, yeah.
and then now county seat. Thank you. And now it's in Watkins.
Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen.
In fact, there was some rivalry between the two towns,
Oh,
and so
no
they
doubt.
both have town halls. And then he said to show this to you, which is some cuttings about Roswell Goff, including this one,
Oh,
which
you
shows
do have
some where he
something.
had some land. So is there anything that you can tell me?
Just generically, in the 1860s, Elmira is a booming city,
Okay.
coming out of the American Civil War and going through up into the early 20th century. Elmira benefits from this entire part of the country, which today we call the Rust Belt. But in that time was the center of business and industry and innovation. And Elmira was very much a part of it.
So a carpenter would have found work.
Would have found plentiful work in this area.
Well, because he talks about the fact that he comes from Elmira, which is his next bit of his journey. It's upside down. So he goes from New York up to here and works around here in Broome County and this whole end of this area. And then he goes by train. He talks about catching a train from Elmira going up to Buffalo, and he sees Niagara Falls there. And then he travels across to Toledo and to Cleveland, and then right across to Chicago.
Sure.
And he talks about eventually getting to, it's just off the map there, but Kansas City and St. Joseph, which is where he ended up,
Okay.
and spent quite a long time there working. But he talks about that taking just over a week.
Yeah.
And what took him, when he went from New York up to here, he talked about taking a day and a night on the trains, which took us 4 hours yesterday.
Yeah, yeah.
It shows you how different it is, doesn't it?
Interstates,
Exactly.
yeah.
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 So is there anything else you can think about telling me about the life of a carpenter or the sorts of working conditions here at that point? He was an
What I
attorney
can
at law.
tell you about Roswell Goff is that we had a Roswell Goff in the town of Ashland or Wellsburg, village of Wellsburg area, and the town of Chemung. It was right on the border, but he was a minister. He was, in fact, I made a copy of this for you. I sent it to you on digital format. But he died in 1825. But
So
this
he
was
wouldn't
definitely...
be the same guy, would it?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
but could it have been this
His
Roswell
son.
Goff? I mean, how many people have the same name?
The
Now,
sons do, don't they? I suppose.
Yeah,
He could have
yeah.
thought
The
his son.
Son or grandson.
Osborne Towner book also referred to Goff as G-O-U-G-H.
Ah, yes, because spellings were variable.
And there is still a Goff family around that's G-O-U-G-H.
Is there?
There's
Ah.
a Goff family in the Horseheads area that
Ah.
had a lot of land. They've been very, they have a lot of, they've done a lot of building, what do I want to call it?
Real estate development. And,
Right.
commercial properties.
And
Well, he was clearly an established
in
chap.
the
This one
Goff
was
name.
really
Yeah,
established chap with 80 acres and...
so it may have been, you know, a descendant of this Roswell Goff, but he was an elder in the Baptist church, so.
Yeah, and the only reason I have at home this beautiful album of Victorian ladies and gentlemen who I know nothing about. I don't know who they are because nobody's written a caption. But the joy about my photograph of my great-grandfather is because it was taken in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And that's more or less where he ended up. He went back to New York to sail, but that's where he worked. He worked on rail cars and things there. So I know that that's water.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have these beautiful pictures of lots of people who are clearly my relatives. Not a clue. Not a clue.
That's sad.
So
You need
if,
to get,
in my system, if you want to put a picture in, you have to write a caption or it won't accept the picture because I'm so cross about not knowing who my family are. So I've got a cunning plan that you can't do it.
Can't do it, yeah.
Coming up after the break, we find out how you can tell your life story for future generations.
Definitely. And you said you kind of had a life-changing experience when your mother passed away and not knowing a lot of her history, and this kind of inspired that as well. Tell me about that experience and how this all kind of was launched.
Sure. My mother and I were incredibly close. We adored each other. We spoke every day. We spoke to each other. We did everything together. And she died very suddenly. And there were so many things about her life I didn't know. I didn't know about her education. I didn't actually know how my parents met. It sounds crazy, but all those little things, they're not, these are not extraordinary experiences, but they are important in your family. And I felt very, very bereft. And so I thought I would become a ghostwriter. And then I realised if you were going to help people tell their story, that was very expensive. Very few people could afford that. And so I used all the skills I'd learned in my career to create a system that means that anybody, no matter how good or bad at writing they are, can create a beautiful book of their life story for their family, because it's the most precious thing you can leave them.
Now, you were talking about your career as well. What did you do for all this preparation and years of experience?
I started my career in newspapers, so I've been writing for 45 years. And then I became a television producer with the BBC, and I ran a programme called That's Life, which was the most popular programme in the UK. And we used to get between 15 and 20 million people watching us every week. So that was fantastic. Great fun, lovely show. And when that ended, I became editor-in-chief of BBC Online, the BBC's early website, because I'm obsessed with new technology and I love new technology. So, that gave me the background, the writing and the understanding new media of how to put this package together. So everything I've learned over my whole career has actually helped me set up a business at the first time at the age of 60. I mean, our life savings, everything has gone into this whole project. So yeah, it's very exciting.
That's wild.
It's not really for you, it's for your family. If you have children, it's for your children. If they have children, it's for your grandchildren. This is a permanent record of what your life was really like.
And this is something that you guys can feel as well, because you are actually launching a US version as well, correct? Tell me about that and how people can go and find this on either a website or anything like that, and what they need to do or bring to you.
Right, let me just all lean over. Everybody should do this for their family, in my view. This is a passion I have. However they do it, it doesn't matter if you sit down and record it. Do it with a voice recorder or a video recorder, or write down. The reason I'm mad about new technology, okay? The reason it's a book is because this format will last longer than anything else. In my lifetime, in television, it's gone from 2-inch tape to 1-inch tape. Now it's all digital. The digital format's changed. So the thing that will last longer than anything else will be a hardback book. So what people do is they go online. If they're not a good writer, and lots of people are not good writers, I have written hundreds of thousands of words that they can choose from, that say they love school, they hated school, they didn't care one way or the other, they had a fantastic romantic life, they had a very sad romantic life. So I have written things that people can choose from, or they can choose it and edit it, or they can write it entirely in their own words. And then they add the photographs and the documents to illustrate what they're talking about. And then when they're ready, they get to see a full proof, so they can see what it's going to look like. And then my system takes their words and pictures, puts it into a template, and creates a beautiful book of a life story. So,
Oh, wow. It really is like, well, you guys will see in just a second, but it really is like a full book, like a novel would almost be.
It's got all the documents, it's got your birth certificate if you've got them. So, and it's all whatever you want to put in. And if you don't want to put something in, then you don't. You know, people say to me, oh, but there's secrets I've got. And I say, don't tell the secrets if you don't want to. But whatever you tell your family, it's like my great-grandfather, his letters are not full of huge, massive events. They're about what he had for breakfast. It was like what he was working, how hard it was, how cold it was here in the winter. It was really frozen. It's much colder here in the winter than it is in the UK. All those little tiny things that don't seem to matter very much. You don't think you've got a story to tell, but actually that story in 2 generations will be the most precious thing that your family have.
No, and I truly believe that too, and I feel as though I'm very lucky. My family lives in Poland, and I understand a lot of that history, and I still have contact with them, and get to know that on a weekly basis. I have contact with that. But I feel a lot of people here in the United States, after their grandmas and great grandmothers came over, a lot of that was lost. So this is a good way to research your own history, get to know it, and connect back to your roots. It truly is very important. So how has been the feedback with your business in the UK?
Oh, it's been amazing, absolutely amazing. And people, the families adore it. I mean, it's terrific. On the website, there are various images, and in fact, I've just filmed a lady on the Queen Mary 2 who got her book for the first time, and people are knocked up because it's a very, very beautiful book, and people don't think they can produce something like that. So the reaction has been absolutely terrific. And what I say is, yes, you're connecting with your great-grandparents or whatever, but your life story and your life history begins with you, because if you don't record it, then in 2 generations, your story will be just as lost as anybody else's. So everybody should tell their life story for their family. But start now. So it's not about researching your great-grandparents, because what will your great-grandchildren know about you if you don't write it?
That's very true. And I found one thing very interesting in your email. You said that you know more about your great-grandfather than you actually know about your grandfather, because he never kept any of that.
That's absolutely right. I know more about this young man. My grandfather, his son, I know nothing about. He wasn't much in my childhood. No letters, no photographs, 1 or 2 photographs of Christmas with me with him. That's it. I don't know about his education. I don't know about his dreams. I don't know anything about his life at all. Very sad. It is. It is sad. I would love to know about him. I would love to know about him. But I know about his dad. His dad was amazing.
All right, so when you get back to the UK, what's one thing you hope to take away from this experience that you're having right now?
I hope that I will have persuaded a lot more people to do what I would like to persuade them to do. And I hope that I will have a much richer picture, even richer picture, of what Walter Mitchell was like and where he went and the people he met.
January 18th, 1868. Goodbye. God bless you all. Kindest love to Red and Fanny. Must write them soon. But they, I suppose, will see this.